All right, let's dive into some rock and roll history. You ready for this?
Always.
You guys sent in a ton of articles about two giants, Elvis and Buddy Holly.
Yeah, talk about an epic face-off.
Right.
Ugh.
It's like you're setting up this ultimate musical showdown.
I
So
love it.
let's get into it. What's fascinating is how similar their beginnings were. Both Southern boys, Elvis from Mississippi, Buddy from Texas.
Total country gospel backgrounds.
But they both found a way to inject like that raw energy of blues and R&B into the mix.
Exactly. It's that fusion that made their music so groundbreaking. You know, they weren't just playing music, they were rebelling against the status quo, creating something totally new.
Yeah, and people went nuts for it. You know, that story about Elvis is, that's all right, still blows me away.
Right.
Some radio listeners actually thought he was black.
It's wild, isn't it? It really highlights how revolutionary they were. This was the 50s, remember, a time of serious racial segregation.
Right.
And Elvis and Buddy, in their own ways, they were challenging those boundaries. They were blending musical styles and audiences like no one had ever seen before.
It's easy to forget just how radical that was back then.
Yeah.
And both of them just skyrocketed to fame. They were topping the charts left and right. Elvis obviously exploded onto the scene, first becoming this global phenomenon.
Oh, yeah. There was something about Elvis, you know, the swagger, the voice, those hips. It captivated audiences everywhere. He became a symbol of youthful rebellion, a true force of nature.
And then there was Buddy with his own unique charisma.
Absolutely. He might not have reached that worldwide fame that Elvis did, but his impact was huge.
Yeah, for sure.
Buddy brought this incredible songwriting talent to the table and a real knack for musical innovation. He embraced instruments like the Fender Stratocaster and, used it in ways nobody had before.
Yeah.
He was crafting this sound that was both unique and infectiously catchy.
Speaking of unique, let's talk about their style. I mean, they're like night and day.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Elvis with the slick back hair, those Lansky Brothers suits. It was all about that rebellious sex appeal,
Drove audiences wild.
Totally. And then you had Buddy with his signature glasses and that clean-cut look. It was a boy-next-door charm, but with a definite edge.
Yeah, he appealed to a different side of that youthful rebellion that was brewing at the time. The thinkers, the songwriters, the kids who wanted to pick up a guitar and just express themselves.
Yeah, and it's incredible how those looks, those iconic images, they became just as much a part of their legacies as the music itself.
Right. They understood the power of image, how it could amplify their music and connect with people on a really visceral level.
Absolutely. And their approaches to music were just as distinct.
For sure.
Elvis with those powerhouse vocals and that electrifying stage presence, it was all about performance. He was a showman through and through, drawing the audience in with his energy and charisma.
And Buddy, he was a master of crafting those timeless melodies and lyrics that just resonated with the hopes and the dreams and anxieties of a whole generation, He wasn't just singing, he was telling stories, inviting you to connect with his music on a deeper level.
And they both took their talents to Hollywood, but with very different results. Elvis went all in, embracing that whole movie musical formula.
Yeah, in those films, they played a massive role in shaping his global stardom. Even if some critics found them a little formulaic, they showcased his charm, his versatility, and they really solidified his image as the ultimate heartthrob.
Right. Buddy's film career was much shorter, but his appearance in the Buddy Holly story had a huge impact.
Oh, absolutely. It became a testament to his legacy. The film focused on his passion for music, his innovative spirit, and that tragic loss the world felt when he passed away.
And that brings us to something we can't avoid talking about. Their tragic deaths. The day the music died, when Buddy Holly died in that plane crash. It's a date forever etched in our collective memory.
It still sends chills down my spine to think about it. Such a young, vibrant talent gone at the peak of his career. It was a devastating loss for the music world.
And Elvis's passing, though not as sudden, was equally impactful. His decline in those later years, the struggles with health and fame, it's a reminder of the toll that stardom can take.
It's true. Elvis's death became a symbol of the fragility of life, the immense pressures that come with fame, and the enduring power of music to transcend even the greatest tragedies.
They both left us way too soon, but their legacy burns bright. Their music is timeless. Their image is instantly recognizable, and their influence can be felt in countless artists who followed.
It's amazing to think that even decades later, their music still has the power to inspire, to provoke, and to move us. Their stories remind us of the power of creativity, the allure of rebellion, and the enduring magic of rock and roll. It's crazy how these two guys from such humble beginnings totally shook the foundations of American culture.
Yeah, you're right. It wasn't just about the music itself, it was what it represented. That mix of country, gospel, blues. It was like a reflection of America at the time, going through all these changes.
Absolutely. They became these lightning rods for both praise and criticism. Think about Elvis and those hip movements. I mean, it sent shockwaves through a society that was already grappling with all these changing ideas about race, sexuality, youthful expression. He was seen as dangerous by some, you know, like a threat to the very moral fabric of America.
It's hard to believe that now, isn't it?
Mm.
But it shows you how much they challenged the status quo. And their influence wasn't just limited to the U.S. either.
Oh, no, not at all.
Like those stories about Elvis's records being pressed on old X-ray plates in Leningrad, I mean, that's incredible.
It really is. It shows you how their music broke through borders and ideologies. It was like a taste of freedom, a little bit of rebellion for people living under oppression.
It was a connection to a whole other world.
Exactly.
And while Elvis was becoming this global superstar, Buddy was forging his own path. He was a true craftsman, obsessed with songwriting and pushing the boundaries of what rock and roll could sound like.
Buddy was a true innovator. He didn't want to just perform. He wanted to understand music from the inside out,
Yeah.
experiment with instruments and recording techniques. His use of the Fender Stratocaster was revolutionary.
Oh, yeah.
He incorporated things like double tracking and closed miking. It created this fuller, richer sound that became a hallmark of his music.
And those glasses, those Buddy Holly glasses, do you know those weren't even his first pair?
Really?
He lost his originals and got a similar style because they were cheaper.
Wow. It's amazing how a simple pair of glasses can become such an iconic symbol.
It's true. It shows how these little details can get woven into an artist's image and legacy.
Right.
So both Elvis and Buddy faced a ton of pressure, but they dealt with it in very different ways. Elvis had Colonel Tom Parker, this marketing mastermind, who basically orchestrated his entire career.
Oh, yeah, Parker was a brilliant businessman. He knew how to create a spectacle, and he turned Elvis into a global brand. But some people say he also stifled Elvis's artistic freedom.
And Buddy. He seemed more focused on the music itself, on honing his craft and staying true to his vision.
Buddy was a purist in many ways. He wrote, sang, and played his own music, and he insisted on creative control. He wasn't afraid to experiment, even when it meant pushing back against the industry.
It's interesting how their careers really mirrored their personalities. Elvis, the charismatic showman, embraced the limelight and everything that came with it. And Buddy, the more introspective artist, let his music speak for itself.
Exactly.
Their personal lives were pretty complex, too. Elvis's marriage to Priscilla, all the hype surrounding their wedding in Vegas. It was a media frenzy.
It was like a real-life fairy tale, but we know it didn't have that storybook ending.
Right.
Their relationship was definitely rocky, and the pressure of fame took its toll. But they did have Lisa Marie, who also went on to pursue music.
It's interesting how their legacy continues to ripple through the generations.
It really is.
And Buddy, he had this whirlwind romance with Maria Elena. They got married just 6 months before he died.
It's a reminder of how fragile life is and how quickly things can change. You know, those letters they wrote each other filled with so much hope and dreams for the future. It's heartbreaking to read them, knowing what happened.
It is. It's also interesting how both Elvis and Buddy were so close to their mothers. Elvis was incredibly close to Gladys, and her death just devastated him.
He was never the same after she passed. It shows you that even these larger-than-life figures are human, They experience loss and grief just like everyone else.
And Buddy's mom, Ella, she supported his musical ambitions from the get-go.
She encouraged him to play guitar, even helped him get his first instrument. The role of mothers in their lives is undeniable, nurturing their talent, believing in their dreams.
It's so important. And faith played a big part in both of their lives, too. It shaped their music and their worldview.
Oh, for sure. Elvis's gospel recordings are so powerful.
Yeah.
You can really feel his spiritual connection.
Yeah. And Buddy's music, while maybe not as overtly religious, often explored themes of hope, redemption, and that search for meaning.
Right. It reminds us that even these rebellious rock and rollers had deeper roots.
And in a way, their deaths kind of solidified their legendary status. The day the music died became this cultural touchstone, a moment frozen in time that still resonates with music lovers today.
Yeah, it's like their music became even more powerful after they were gone. This tangible link to a bygone era, a reminder of the raw energy and emotion that rock and roll could achieve.
They left a void that could never be filled, but their music continues to inspire and influence generations of artists. The Beatles, Bruce Springsteen, so many others.
They weren't just musicians, they were pioneers who broke down barriers and redefined what was possible in popular music.
Their legacies are complex and multifaceted. They were flawed individuals who faced a lot of challenges, but they also had this undeniable spark of genius that ignited a cultural revolution.
And that's what makes their stories so compelling. They remind us that music can be this force for change, a source of comfort and inspiration, and a timeless expression of what it means to be human.
Isn't it wild how their music still sounds so fresh even today? Decades later, it's like they've achieved musical immortality or something.
You know, I think they tapped into something universal, something that goes beyond time or place. Those songs speak to the hopes, dreams, anxieties, heartbreaks. It's all part of the human experience.
Right. Makes sense why they still connect with people of all ages.
Yeah.
And it's more than just the music, too. Think about how their images are everywhere.
Yeah.
Elvis, those jumpsuits with all those rhinestones, they're like cultural artifacts now.
Oh, totally. They're more than clothes at this point.
Yeah.
They represent a whole era, a symbol of excess rebellion. I mean, you see those jumpsuits everywhere, from Halloween costumes to like high fashion stuff.
Yeah, it's proof of how ingrained they are in our minds.
Absolutely.
And then there's Buddy Holly, those simple black glasses. They become this symbol of understated, cool, like a timeless fashion statement.
It's true. You see them everywhere. Vintage shops, designer stores. It's like they represent a certain kind of intellectualism, a quieter rebellion that still speaks to people.
And it's fascinating how those little things become so iconic.
Definitely. Their impact on fashion is huge, but their musical legacy is even bigger.
Oh yeah, think about all the artists who were influenced by them. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen, the list goes on.
It's like a musical family tree. You know, Elvis and Buddy are right there at the roots. Their music provided a blueprint for rock and roll, a foundation that so many other artists built on.
They inspired generations of musicians to pick up a guitar, to write their own songs, to express themselves authentically, to challenge the status quo.
And their impact goes way beyond rock and roll, too. Country pop, even hip hop. You can hear echoes of their influence in so many different styles.
It's amazing how their music transcends boundaries,
Yeah.
inspires new interpretations across genres and generations. It's really powerful.
Yeah.
So what do you think their most enduring legacy is?
I think it's their passion for music, their willingness to break the mold to create something new. They weren't afraid to challenge expectations, to push boundaries, to make people think and feel differently about music and themselves.
They were true pioneers. Their music still brings so much joy, inspiration, and fascination to millions of people around the world. They were flawed individuals, of course, but they had this spark of genius that ignited a cultural revolution.
Yeah, and their stories remind us that music has the power to change the world, to connect us, to inspire us, to make us feel alive.
Well said. This deep dive into Elvis and Buddy Holly has been a blast. Two very different artists, but both essential to the history of rock and roll. Gone too soon, but their music will live on forever.
They were one of a kind. Their stories still speak to us today. They remind us of the power of creativity, that allure of rebellion, and the magic of rock and roll.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep listening, keep exploring, and keep that rock and roll spirit alive.